Good afternoon and welcome to the ARC's self-direction webinar, in which we review important topics to help you successfully self-direct your services. Please note this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the ARC's Forms and Resources page of the website, along with the presentation under webinars. So if you or anyone you know miss it, you can always come to the website and watch the recording there. Today, we will be reviewing revised budget sheet tips with Michelle Nicholas, our budget review manager. I'm Peter Cook, our director of stakeholder relations, and also in attendance is Karen Bradbury, our director of outreach. We're going to start with a presentation by Michelle. So if you could hold off on asking questions in the Q&A module until the presentation is over, we will have a Q&A session at the end to provide clarification if anyone has any questions. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle. Michelle, good to have you here today.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle Nicholas, and I'm the Budget Review Manager for Self-Directed Services here at the ARC Central Chesapeake Region FMCS. Today, we will be discussing the revised PCP budget review process and specific things that we're looking for while we conduct our reviews. Next slide. Oftentimes, things change in a participant's life. To reflect these changes in a participant's budget, a revised person-centered plan is required. Revised PCPs are completed by the CCS and LTSS. Once the revised PCP is approved by the DDA, the team will need to develop a budget sheet that aligns with the approved revised PCP. Participants often revise their PCPs due to needing an increase, decrease, or discontinue existing services, add new services, or update day-to-day administrator hours. Please note that a revised PCP budget sheet is not the same thing as a budget modification. Next slide, please. Just like the annual budget sheets, a budget sheet is required for every PCP approved in LTSS in the order that they are approved. We are unable to accept budget sheets that are not aligned to a specific PCP. The FMCS will not be able to review budget sheets for a revised PCP unless the previously approved PCP's budget sheets have been processed in FMS Engine. This information is verified in the participant dashboard. Next slide. Just like annual budget sheets, the team should be using the most current version of the budget sheets available on DDA's website. The current version of the budget sheet contains 2 lines dedicated to the FMCS fee to support the rate increase depending on the participant's annual plan date. This chart shows how the fee increases should be displayed on the budget sheet depending on the participant's annual plan date. For example, if the participant's annual plan date is in October 2024, then their budget sheet should display $210.13 for the first 9 months, and then $215.17 for the remaining 3 months of their plan year. If a participant has an annual plan date in July 2024, then only one line needs to be utilized. For example, if their plan date is July 15, 2024, then we would need to see the $210.13 for 12 months on the budget sheet. In a revised PCP budget sheet, the FMCS fee does not change from the annual budget sheet. Next slide. The next thing that we're looking for is the total budget allocation from the PCP. This total budget allocation from the PCP goes into the yellow box next to the big red arrow. The middle and box to the far right are automatically populated as the budget sheet is completed. The box in the middle calculates the budget lines as they are entered. The third box, known as the unallocated funds, subtracts the total of the budget sheet from the total budget allocation. The FMCS will not accept budget sheets that are in the negative. The box will turn red if it's over budget. Next slide. Next, we're going to discuss the dates on the budget sheet. The effective date on the budget sheet must match the effective date of the PCP. The effective date of the revised PCP will not be the same as the annual plan date. The annual plan date on the budget sheet is the day that the annual PCP begins. Please note that the annual PCP date on the PCP is not the same as the annual plan date on the budget sheet. Typically, you will see on the PCP the annual plan date has the year listed as the following year. The effective date is the day that the revised PCP budget sheet goes into effect. Next slide. Ideally, the revised PCP budget sheets should be identical to the previously approved budget sheets in the same plan year. For example, if the PCP was revised to add an environmental assessment, then the budget sheet should be identical to the annual budget sheets except for the effective date, budget allocation amount, and the addition of the environmental assessment. No other service changes should be made to the budget sheet. It should be noted that there are instances where the revised PCP budget sheets would not match the previously approved budget sheets. If a team completes a budget modification in between PCPs, the information from the modification should be captured on the budget sheets. Another area that would not match is wage and rate changes within authorized services. Next slide. Next, we're going to discuss some common errors that happen within revised PCP budget sheets. First, prorated budget sheets. To prorate means to divide something in a proportional way based on time. When you enter the effective date and the annual PCP dates on the budget sheet automatically calculates the number of months and weeks remaining in the plan year. These figures are to be applied to service changes only. If a service was not changed in the revision and no changes are made to the wages or rate of that service, then that service line should be identical to the previously approved budget sheets. If you prorate the service based on the number of months or weeks remaining in the plan year, then you are lowering the funding for that service line, which can result in an early depletion of that service. Another issue that arises from inaccurately prorated services is that the previous usages to that service line are not captured, which results in an imbalanced budget. Next slide. A common error that we see are omitted budget modifications and previously budgeted lines that have usages. A common place for this to happen in the budget sheet is under employee benefits such as PTO, holiday pay differential, health benefits, training costs, training wages, mileage, and staff transportation travel reimbursement. It is important to capture those usages on the budget sheet to prevent an imbalance in the budget. CCS has access to the participant dashboard and can track changes in the budget. Please visit our website to access the webinar titled Using the Participant Dashboard to learn more. For the next few slides, we're going to be using these dates for our examples. Please note that the number of months left in this plan is 6 months, and the number of weeks left in this plan is 28.286 weeks. Next slide. The role of the FMCS is to ensure that the budget sheets match the PCP's authorized services and service units per the DDA's guidance. Now, we're going to dive into the actual revision part of the budget sheets. Just like in an annual budget sheet review, the budget review team converts the information in the detailed service authorization using the following formula. First, you take the total number of units and divide it by 4 to get the total number of hours. Then, the total number of hours is divided by the total number of weeks. This will give you the number of hours per week for a number of weeks. In a revised PCP, if a new service is added, such as ongoing job support, the formula is the same except for the number of weeks that the number of hours is divided by. So, for example, if ongoing job supports is authorized for 2,880 units for the remaining 28.286 weeks in a plan year, then this equates to 25 hours per week for the remaining 28.286 weeks. We got this number by taking the total number of units, divided that by 4, and then we divided that by the total number of weeks remaining, which is 28.286 weeks. Next slide. The most common error that we see in revised PCP budget sheets is that the revised services are not accurately displayed on the budget sheets. If an existing service is increased, such as personal supports, then the budget sheet should reflect the existing service and then the increased service. This example shows that the team began the plan year with 20 hours per week of personal supports, and then increased the service to 40 hours per week for the remaining 28.286 weeks in the plan year. Next slide. Decreased services are another area that can be challenging to display on the budget sheet. If a team began the plan year with 40 hours of personal supports, but decides that they only need 20 hours of service for the remainder of the plan year, it would be displayed like this. You see that the first line of personal supports is for 23.857 weeks, and the second line is for 28.286 weeks. To get this number, I simply subtracted the number of weeks remaining in the plan year from 52.143 weeks. Next slide. A participant may decide that they no longer need a service. Although the service is no longer authorized, it must be captured on the budget sheet to prevent an imbalance. In this example, the participant began the plan year with 40 hours per week of personal supports, and then roughly halfway through the year, they decided that this service is no longer needed. Just like decreasing services, the number of weeks remaining in the plan year should be subtracted from 52.143 weeks to show the authorized time of the service. Next slide. Perhaps one of the easiest revisions to complete in a revised PCP budget sheet is the addition of a new service. The newly authorized service is placed on the budget sheet with the number of weeks or months remaining in the plan year. This slide shows 2 examples of services being added to the budget sheet. Next slide. In this example, the participant is changing staff wages. The team did not change the number of hours to the service. To accurately reflect the wage change, the team will need to subtract the number of weeks remaining in the plan year from 52.143 weeks. When it is written this way, you can see that the staff started the service at $30 per hour for the first 23.857 weeks of the plan year. And then they increased the wage to $32.18 per hour for the remaining 28.286 weeks of the plan year. You can check your math by adding the weeks together in each service line. 23.857 weeks plus 28.286 weeks equals 52.143 weeks. Next slide. We recognize that there are many other scenarios in which services are revised and how they should be displayed on the budget sheet. We ask that you work together as a team and do your best to display the information on the budget sheets. If you make a mistake, please know that the budget review team is more than happy to assist the CCS with correcting the errors. Any questions?
Great. Thank you so much, Michelle. I'll read off some of the questions that we have coming in here. So the first question is about whether or not you would need to revise a PCP if you wanted to add day-to-day administrator services.
So this is just written in DDA's guidance. It just says in DDA's guidance that day-to-day administrator hours have to be listed in the PCP and tied to an outcome.
Yeah, so while you wouldn't necessarily see that, you wouldn't see it in the detailed service authorization, it still needs to be included in the PCP showing that it's tied to an outcome.
Correct.
Great. The next question is, if a PCP gets approved by DDA, how should the budget sheet be submitted to the ARC for review, or revised PCP, since we're talking about revised PCPs and budget sheets in this case?
So we receive an alert when PCPs are approved, and the CCS either can upload the budget sheet in LTSS or they can submit it to the FMS participants at the arcccr.org email.
Thank you. The next question is, what is the difference between a budget revision and a budget modification?
This is a great question. So a revised PCP is for people who need their services changed. And this includes like increasing hours, decreasing hours, adding new services, discontinuing services. Budget modifications are more so for moving already authorized services across budget lines. So for example, like let's say a person has personal supports and CDS, but they feel that they're not using as much CDS and that they're using more personal supports, they can take some of those CDS hours and move them into personal supports through a budget modification.
Great, thank you. The next question is, regarding holiday pay. This isn't quite related to a revised budget, but we can answer it just for some clarity. The question is about the difference between, is holiday pay for like a holiday that someone takes off where they're not working, or is it for a holiday on which an employee works? I can answer that. It could be both. It could be either. It depends what ends up getting added to the plan and the budget sheet. So you could pay an employee like a different holiday rate. They also have the option of using straight time if they work on a holiday. That would be up to the participant. But if someone takes a day off and they're getting paid a different rate for that for a holiday, then you would have a holiday off code rather than a holiday worked code. So the participant would want to talk to their CCS about making sure that that stuff's included on the budget sheet, or that they do a mod to add something if it's not already included. The next question is, who is this webinar for? CCSs, support brokers, participants? You want to answer that, Michelle?
Honestly, I think that this is geared a little bit more towards the CCSs, as they're the ones who complete the changes on the budget sheets, but yeah, it's open to everyone.
I think it's useful for participants to know, to understand the process, and so that they can work with CCSs to ensure that, their budget sheets and revised budget sheets, are submitted in a timely manner to ensure continuity of services. Next question, is a budget mod needed to increase wages that are already in the approved plan and budget?
So this is a good question. A budget modification. So in order to change wages on, it's a tricky question. Thank you. Trying to think of the best way to answer this. If a person's wages on the budget sheet say $30 an hour, but they want to increase the wages to $32 an hour, a budget modification can be used to make that change. But if the budget sheet already says $32 an hour, but the staff are only being paid $30 an hour, that's a separate process that would involve like an employee change form.
Great, thank you. The next question is, if a person had an ADP that was originally denied and then went to a hearing and the PCP wasn't approved until 6 months later, how would the budget sheet reflect it?
So just like any other budget, we would just follow the DSA, the detailed service authorization. So if the detailed service authorization is showing a full 12 months of service, then the budget sheet should show a full 12 months. But if it's only showing, 6 months, then the budget sheet should be reflective of that.
Great. This question is about modifications, but how many budget modifications can be submitted for a plan?
I can't answer that.
Yeah, as far as I know, I don't think there is a limit. But in either case, if a participant were interested in doing a modification, they should reach out to their CCS. How long does it take for the ARC to approve a revised budget sheet or a budget sheet? And who is notified when it's approved?
This is a great question. So we receive an alert in LTSS when the PCP is approved. And the first thing that we do is we assign them to our reviewers. And then our reviewers, they first go to LTSS to see if the budget sheet has been uploaded. If it's been uploaded, the review starts immediately. If the budget sheet is not uploaded, then the reviewer will send an email to the CCS and request that budget sheet. I can't give you a time, like a turnaround time on how long it takes for a budget sheet to get approved, because it just depends on how many, edits are required and, how responsive the team is.
Great. And the next question is, again, it's more related to mods, but what would the turnaround time be to review a budget modification?
So right now we are reviewing budget modifications within 5 business days of receiving them.
The next question is, can holiday pay differential go above and beyond the reasonable and customary rates? I would say you would have to have a wage exception form. But for any rate that goes above the reasonable and customary, wage exception form is required. Okay, I don't see any more questions. I want to give people just another minute or so in case anybody's typing up a question. Okay, I don't see any more questions. So that should be it for the webinar. We thank you for joining us today. Again, we are recording this, so we'll have it posted on the forms and resources page of our website under webinars within the next week or so. And we will be sending additional communications about our next upcoming webinar soon. So thanks so much for joining us today. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.